call this meeting to order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we do have a couple of announcements this morning. I keep saying that. Gazebo Palooza, a benefit for the Small Stones Festival of Arts, is on Saturday, September 17th from noon to 6 p.m. on behalf of Old Town Hall at 1 Grafton Common. There will be sample food from area's best restaurants, live performances, and local favorites, and a great items for bid at the silent auction. Admission is $15 and free for children 10 and under with an adult. The Recreation Department has an extended registration for the MetaFit for adults until Thursday, September 15th. Also, there are a few spots open for adult hike being held next week. Check out all their programs at graftonrec.com. There are several vacancies on several boards and committees in the town of Grafton. If you are interested in volunteering, please complete the citizen activity form on grafton-ma.gov to apply. So the first on the agenda is the National Grid poll petition for the Apprentice Street poll. We read the legal notice, please.
Yes, ma'am. The Select Board will hold a public meeting on the request of National Grid to locate poles, wires, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public way. Prentice Street. Prentice Street. National Grid to install one JO pole on Prentice Street beginning at a point approximately 68 feet southeast of the center line of the intersection of Creeper Hill Road and Prentice Street. Installing P14 on Prentice Street for construction of UCD on Prentice Street. The public hearing will be held on September 13th, 2022 and take place in person in Conference Room A of the Grafton Memorial Municipal Center.
Keep going.
Located at 30 Providence Road and via Zoom starting at 7 p.m. The Zoom link will be posted on the September 13, 2022 agenda. The purpose of this hearing is to provide an opportunity for public comment. Anyone wishing to may attend in person or via Zoom. Posted to the Town Bulletin Board August 12th, 2022 and the Grafton News August 25th, 2022. And I move the board vote to open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Because we do have a remote participation member, we're going to have to do them all by roll call. So we'll start with Matt.
Aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, aye.
Foley, aye.
Ray? Ray, we're taking a vote to open the public hearing. Can you hear us? Okay, seems to be some technical difficulty, but we do have a majority that said aye. Well, he figures that out. So, declare the motion carried. Public hearing is open. And do we have anybody from National Grid that would like to speak to this?
Hi, I'm here from National Grid.
Hi, Mr. Williams. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Is there anything you'd like to say, or are you just here to answer any questions that the public may have?
I'm here to answer any questions.
Wonderful. Does anybody have any questions about this poll petition? I don't see anybody in person. How about on Zoom?
Nope.
I can take a motion to close the public hearing.
Sure. I move the board vote to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. We'll do it by roll call still.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Ray cannot hear, so he's going to log out and log back in.
Okay.
So I would just keep moving forward.
Perfect.
Often aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, aye.
Foley, aye.
Okay. I'll declare the motion carried. So we can.
I move the board vote to approve and sign the Prentice Street poll petition by National Grid.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry.
Opposed? Hearing none. Declare the motion carried. Up next is the. Oh, thank you, Mr. Williams, for coming in.
Thank you.
Up next is the appointment of Tree Warden, Mr. Kevin Gallagher. He is here. Would you like to come up and say hello? You don't have to, but you can.
Hello. Yeah, I got my tree warden's license last fall, and I've been kind of shadowing with Paul, going over, tree removal and doing the due diligence of everything. So it's just one more thing I can take off his plate. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks for coming in tonight.
Yeah.
And I can take a motion unless anybody has any questions for Mr. Gallagher.
Now, do you see any particular challenges in Grafton?
Just continuing to remove all the devastation that we've had from the gypsy moths. We're getting there.
Yeah.
But it's a slow process.
I feel that. We had about 6 or 8 trees just in my little acre property
Yeah.
that they just decimated them.
Yeah.
So I feel bad for you guys, but
Yeah.
glad you're starting to catch up.
Yeah.
Good.
No, our list has definitely dwindled down, and we got a much better contracted tree company that's moving much quicker, way more efficient, and so we're making a little headway now.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Excellent.
And we had
Good to hear.
increased the budget for that.
Yep.
2 years back, so that we can make a faster dent in those public trees.
Right. Yeah, before they become safety hazards.
Right.
Yep.
Perfect. All right.
I move the board vote to appoint Kevin Gallagher as the tree warden for the town of Grafton.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Ray, can you hear us now? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Declare the motion carried. Thank you.
All right.
Up next is an election worker. So we can just take a motion for that.
I move the board vote to appoint Terry Schmidt as an election worker for the town of Grafton.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Declare the motion carried.
Colleen, sorry, can I just ask a question?
Sure
It's
can.
relative to election workers. So back in July, we had 3 ladies that were on the agenda to be appointed. My understanding then it was going to flip back to the clerk.
Yep.
And my understanding is, as of today, none of them have been appointed. So I just wondered if either A, we could get them back on our agenda, because now we're back within the dates, from what I understand, of has to be more than 6 weeks away from the election or something. I mean, given that we're appointing someone else, those 3 people are still out there.
Yep. So during the time it was the town clerk's appointment, I actually reached out to the town clerk with those individuals' names to ensure that they were going to be appointed. I never heard back from the town clerk. So I don't know
I
how
can
or
only
why it
speak
didn't happen.
to one of them that I know has followed up subsequently with the clerk, but I know that all 3 of them have not heard anything. So either,
And the clerk got back to you?
no,
Okay.
I haven't spoken to the clerk.
Okay.
I guess I can if that's
Oh, no,
the
no,
route
no,
we want
that's
to go
fine.
to, or do we just want to make sure that they're back on the agenda, these 3 ladies?
I can reach out to Candy tomorrow and see what the disposition of those 3 people are.
Okay. Perfect.
We were quasi alerted to it earlier this evening, around, I don't know, 5-ish.
Yeah.
So, or a little after. Doesn't matter what time it was. I don't know why I'm focusing on that. But we will. That was the first we had heard that process hadn't been.
I mean, I've been kind of just watching it and waiting, but now that I figured, okay, it's the clerk's job until after the primaries,
As
but
it
now that
was,
we've got.
that was what the process was supposed to be. Yes.
Yep. And
understood.
I was trying to keep tabs on it so it didn't fall through the
Right,
cracks.
okay,
but
great,
It
thanks,
happened. So
thanks for the time.
let's just double check with Ray. We can see you, Ray. Can you hear us yet?
Hi, kids.
Oh, hi. Okay, perfect. So going forward, we'll make sure to include you.
Geez, I would thank you. I don't want to sit here and do nothing.
Perfect. All right, so up on the agenda next is the Eagle Scout project. We have Mr. Shellberg here with an Eagle Scout too. Or maybe 2, I'm not sure.
Couple of seconds here. All right, very quickly, I'm going to read something here that has really nothing to do with Cole's project, but this is the culmination of about 12 and a half years worth of research to get the town on board where all our veterans are in all of our cemeteries. So, first of all, I'm Andy Shellberg. I'm an Air Force veteran, Vietnam War, and I'm a member of Post 1497 VFW in South Grafton. Since the mid-1900s, I've heard many complaints from family members and deceased veterans buried in Grafton cemeteries that did not get a flag on Memorial Day. I decided I would try to do something to correct the problem. One of the major problems with placing American flags is the fact that many of the volunteers that place the flags are not veterans and would not place flags where official flag holders were not present. In Grafton, we have veterans buried in 5 major cemeteries: Fairview, Riverside, Pine Grove, St. Philip, private cemetery, and the old cemetery. The old cemetery is right across the street from this building. And 2 smaller satellite cemeteries in Old Farnhamsville and the Grafton State Hospital, which they call Hillcrest Cemetery. Grafton Veterans agents work from a badly out-of-date VA-provided computer file containing the names of deceased veterans, their date of death, and the name of the cemetery in which the veteran was buried. Other information was kept on paper files. Grafton Cemetery Commissioners keep records of everyone buried in Grafton cemeteries, but nothing in St. Philip. All of these records are kept on paper. In 2011, after coordinating with getting permission from the post commanders, the veterans agents, cemetery commissioners, and the town administrators, I acted. Now, let's figure out what the hell to do with those. Pardon me. In May of 2012, I approached the Scoutmaster of Boy Scout Troop 107, asked if he knew any boys needing an Eagle project, interviewed 3 boys he knew needed a project. I assigned 3 Eagle Scout projects to these boys, 1 each at Pine Grove, Riverside, and St. Philip cemeteries. These 3 projects were completed and presented to the town in 2014. Veteran data for Fairview Cemetery was in a file updated and maintained for our veterans agent by a non-veteran, Walter Lucia. When Mr. Lucia informed me that he would be moving out of town and no longer able to update the veterans list, I knew I needed to assign a 4th Eagle project. In early June of 2015, I interviewed another scout, this time from Troop 107. On June 8, 2015, I assigned to John Renzoni an Eagle project at Fairview Cemetery. John completed his Eagle project on March 3, 2016, and he presented the completed project to the town last month. Wanting to complete my veterans inventory in the last of Grafton's 5 large cemeteries in May of 2021, I interviewed another scout, this time one from Troop 106 in North Grafton. In June of 2021, I spoke with Mr. Broussard to obtain his permission for me to act as beneficiary instead of the town for an Eagle Scout project to be completed at the cemetery up on the hill across the street from his office. He said yes. On July 29, 2021, I assigned Cole Anderson an Eagle Scout project at the old cemetery. Cole started the work on his Eagle project shortly after August 11, 2021, and completed it on June 26, 2022. As noted above, it's customary that an Eagle Scout project with the town of Grafton as its beneficiary be presented to the town shortly after it is completed. So tonight, Cole is presenting his completed project to the town. At this time, he'll give you a brief description of his project and the steps he took to complete it. Cole, would you step up, please?
Hi, my name is Cole Anderson. I'm an Eagle Scout from Troop 106. So while working towards my Eagle rank, as Mr. Shelberg said, I completed a project in Oak Street Cemetery, with the goal of the project being to collect and record information on the veterans buried there, and to make sure that those veterans were properly marked and recognized for the sacrifices they made. I began my project reviewing the data that we had already and planning my work days. These days were some of the most important towards completing the project, where I and my workers collected most of the information that I needed to fill in for the database. I'd like to thank Ryan Gleason, Nick McCool, Brian Romeo, Luke Wexler, Joey Correa, my brother, Nate Anderson, and my father, Mr. Anderson, for assisting me during these work days. The work was difficult, with the cemetery being disorganized and some of the stones being nearly illegible, but they pulled through and got most of the data we needed. While my workers did well at the work days, there was still more data to collect from the cemetery afterwards. I went back myself a couple of times for several hours to collect the remaining data, primarily GPS coordinates. I took a record of what stones lack markers as well, so that we could mark those, and we completed new plot maps for the north and south plains to assist any future research or projects in the cemetery. After the cemetery data was collected, we began the research phase. one of my main project goals was to create a database to add to the one that Mr. Schellberg was assembling, to complete it in this case, of all the veterans in the cemetery. And we started this by adding all the info we had so far, the stuff we collected from the cemetery, the stuff I was given, and then we only had to fill in the blanks. To do this, we needed a lot of outside resources, and I would like to thank Mr. Schellberg, my beneficiary representative, Mrs. Therian from the Grafton Historical Society, and again, my father, Mr. Anderson, for finding and supplying resources to me and helping greatly with the research itself. Another one of the project deliverables was the sign here to be placed in the cemetery itself, showing the layout of the area. The sign went through numerous design changes and edits, and all of these produced the finished sign I have here tonight. Shows the rows in the cemetery, the outline of the south and north plains, and the property itself and its relation to the surrounding roads and features. I would like to thank Mr. Reginald Anderson for covering the price of the sign. The last part of the project I'd like to touch on is the marking of the graves. And here when I say marking, I mean the little flag holders that hold the flags we put in for Memorial Day. When I started this project, only 45 of the 102 veterans that we ended up finding had these markers, whether they were metal or plastic or anything. And by the end of the project, all of these veterans had flags, flag holders, and flags, and they were all properly marked. I attended the stop at Oak Street Cemetery on Memorial Day, and seeing all of the stones out there with the markers and the flags flying above them really just made the whole thing worth it, knowing that all of them were properly recognized now. I'd again like to thank all the volunteers I mentioned for the workday. I'd like to thank Mr. Schellberg in particular for his excellent guidance throughout the project. He was always there to answer any questions I had, supply resources such as books and flag holders, and to provide valuable motivation that got me back on track to finish the project. I would also again like to thank my father, Mr. Anderson, as he helped me throughout the project, offering planning advice, assisting me in research, teaching me how to use Excel, and much more. So to finish off, I shall present the sign itself.
Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. So that is all I have for tonight. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for all the phenomenal hard work.
Thanks,
Thank
Cole.
you, Cole.
Okay, very quick again. Cole has added veteran data that he collected at the old cemetery. Now, you note Cole kept referring to Oak Street Cemetery. Well, we had a discussion with Mrs. Terrian and several people in the Historical Society, and we determined that in 1734 the cemetery was established as a 4-acre plot on the hill as part of the first town of Grafton. It wasn't incorporated actually until 1735. A little quick little note with who is over there. Of the 40 original families that actually took acreage to build the town of Grafton, there's right now, I believe, 19 or 20, almost half of those families have representatives in that cemetery. So it has a larger than normal historical reverence for the town. Okay. Let's see. The database is a cloud resident Microsoft Excel file that now contains all the known veteran cemetery data from all 5 veteran cemeteries. When I have combined all the data for all the 5 cemeteries into one file, I'll give the master database to the town as a read-only file. I will provide updates to this file on any basis that you determine necessary. For as long as I am able, I'll update that file. I will also have hopefully a backup, so if something would have happened to me, someone can continue the work. So that's basically almost 13 years worth of effort, and I'm finally done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice. Do you think you could get this over to maybe Mr. Canoy or somebody to hang it up?
Yes,
Awesome.
we will do that.
Awesome. Okay, up next is a 1-day beer and wine license for Tufts University.
Hi, this is Jessica Scott. I am requesting a one-day permit for a student event on September 24th, 2022, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. on our campus center lawn or inside our Elms Cafe, depending on the weather. Basic application request. We have a tip certified bartender, and we have requested a police detail.
Awesome, thank you. Does the board have any questions or comments? Hearing none, I can take a motion.
I move the board vote to issue a one-day beer and wine license for September 24th, 2022 to the Cummings School of Veterinary Medicine, Tufts University.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor by roll call. Matt?
Often aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, I.
Fully aye.
Mead aye.
Okay, declare the motion carried. Congratulations and thanks for coming in tonight.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Up next is the common improvement change order, and I see we have Mr. Scarlett on Zoom.
Good evening. How are you?
Good.
Hey,
How
Paul.
are you?
Very well, thank you. So I'm here tonight, Paul Scarlett, representing the Historic District Commission regarding the Common Improvements Project. I'm here to go over our, hopefully, and I fully anticipate it to be our last change order on the project. I was planning on meeting with you all in August. I had presented our plans to the Community Preservation Committee in August, and we got some feedback relative to concern with the lack of a railing, an at-height railing, along the elevated walkway. And we wanted to ensure that we reviewed that and took that under consideration. And, that feedback came from one of our CPC members, Jim Gallagher. But also during the meeting, we had another gentleman contact us regarding concerns, and that was Bill Yeomans, essentially raising the same concerns. If you all recall, the elevated walkway that we put in was designed with intent to not require handrails, because we're looking to preserve the historic integrity and look and feel of the structure. And by doing an elevated walkway versus a ramp, you don't need to use handrails because the slope is much more gradual. It's a 5% slope as opposed to 12. However, we realized as the project was going on that the original plan to slope away from the walkway to bring the surface back down to grade could not be accommodated at the landing where the walkway would be at its highest point. There was insufficient space. And because of that, the recommendation that we had was to put in a retaining wall, a small retaining wall, to allow us to have more of a vertical drop off to allow the height to be accommodated within that space. Unfortunately, that then created a 20-inch drop off vertical as opposed to something that sloped down. And we did feel that there was concern with that. We were originally thinking of an edge guard to prevent anyone on a wheelchair from going over the edge. But then based on the feedback that we got from Mr. Gallagher and Mr. Yeomans, we revisited that. We had input from the architect again on it, and ultimately landed on a solution that will provide not only a barrier like that edge guard would have, but will actually provide a handrail that could be used by somebody with disabilities, if so chosen. And that railing will be designed to mirror the railing that goes around the bandstand today. If you may recall, the railing was designed to mirror the original design of that railing when it was gifted to the town by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer back in 1935. So it has an X pattern versus the balusters that were straight up and down before. Mr. Berger did ask us for a letter just explaining why we were using that. I did include that in the information I sent to all of you. Essentially, again, we're looking to not only provide accessibility to the bandstand, but we're also looking to bring back some historic elements, and that was why we were looking for that design of railing. Long and short is the railings around the bandstand and the railings along the walkway are not required by code. However, we do want to maintain the look and feel of the bandstand, so we obviously wanted to have them around there, and then to provide not only a barrier along the higher points of the elevated walkway, but to also provide a handrail. We decided that it made the most sense to mimic that design on the top 3 sections of the elevated walkway. So that would be the landing right where it goes into the bandstand, and then the 2 sections that are immediately after that. So essentially, by the time it gets down to the final 2 sections of the walkway, it is a very minimal elevation at that point, and we will slope the grade down as it originally been planned, and be able to provide the accessibility, and make sure that we have an abundance of caution, that we're not creating a situation where someone could fall and hurt themselves, and maintaining the historic integrity of the structure. So that is what you have before you. From where we were originally, when I was going to be coming to visit you guys in August to now, the plans have changed very minimally. Again, it's the railing that's changed a little bit on the retaining wall design, and the net effect of it is what we are presenting today is only $600 different from what we were proposing back in August if we had come before you at that point. I did also include in the packet some examples of the stone veneer that we're going to be covering the retaining wall with. The retaining wall itself will be concrete. It'll be faced with this stone veneer to give it a more pleasant appearance. And it will actually also be capped with granite, and then the railing will be mounted on top of that. So we have all the plans. I provided those to you, as well as that sample of the stone veneer options. The estimate that came from JAM, which is our contractor, along with the change order itself and the letter from Bob Berger. So I think I've covered everything I had intended to, but I'm certainly open to any questions that you guys may have.
Okay, thank you. Does the board have any questions?
I do. So, Paul, so the walkway is in the rear, like towards the country store?
So the walkway actually goes around the bandstand itself.
Okay.
So it starts just to the right of the entrance, the regular entrance to the bandstand, and then wraps its way around and comes up in the back towards where you were just referring to.
And so is it like also functioning as a ramp, or is the ramp separate?
It's not a ramp, it's an elevated walkway.
Okay.
A ramp has a 12 degree elevation. So this is what is providing accessibility, but it is not a ramp.
Okay. And then, did you come in August with a change order or no?
I had planned to, and then I had to pull it at the last minute because of the feedback that we had gotten.
Okay.
So no, I did not come before you, but I had.
So most of this, like the retaining wall, was going to be on there anyway, as you just said.
Yeah, the only thing that's different, the retaining wall is not quite as long. We felt we did not need it on the last 2 sections because we are essentially almost down to grade there anyways. So we're going to slope as we originally did. Originally it was going to go the full length essentially, and then we're going to have the metal edge guard on the whole thing. So now it's a little bit shorter than it was, and we're using the wooden railing, and the wooden railing will only be where the retaining wall is.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Now that we're digging into the accessibility a little more and changing this, is this something that we feel the Accessibility Commission should have some time to review and weigh in on, or is it too complicated at this point? That it is what it is, and we just have to move forward.
So if I could share some thoughts on that. So nothing has really changed from an accessibility standpoint with the plans. We're still providing an elevated walkway just as we had proposed originally. If anything, we're adding an additional layer of accessibility by providing a handrail that isn't required by code or by the ADA. I have been in contact with the chair of the Accessibility Commission, and all along sharing with him the plans and discussing it with him. They have not had a chance to meet since the plans came out. They meet this Thursday, but he expressed to me that he didn't expect anything but a favorable reception to what was proposed.
Great, thank
Because
you.
again, we're not creating anything as far as a new hazard. If anything, we are adding an enhancement to accessibility that isn't required.
Paul, I did have a question. I remember attending a historic district meeting a while back when this walkway was first being talked about, and it hasn't been included in any of the change orders already. I just wanted to make sure that we're not already funding something that we've funded.
No, not this piece of it. Yes, we did come to you for the funding for the elevated walkway, but this is a change in plans from that. So the additional 33,304 is for something that you haven't seen before. It's not extra.
Right, so the walkway is technically funded out of change order number 4, and change order number 5 is the retaining wall, the railing, and some of the other ancillary stuff that's listed in that invoice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct?
I'm sorry, the one thing I didn't mention, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Evan, there's just under $4,000 is for the extra labor and materials associated with the renovation of the bandstand itself. The level of rot when they started taking boards apart was far more extensive than we had ever realized. And so essentially they had to replicate everything that was there. But that additional 3,854, I think it is, represents that. The rest of it has to do with the elevated walkway.
So speaking of rot, was any other consideration for the railing besides wood thought of? $5,000 for something that will eventually rot seems, they're a different material to maybe use for the railing.
Well, it's pressure treated lumber that's being used, so it should have a good lifespan on it. We were more concerned with matching what was there and creating something that wouldn't blend. That was part of the reasoning for having the wooden railing as opposed to other alternatives, was to keep with the historic integrity of the structure itself. I mean, we're adding something that wasn't there before, but we want it to look like it was there.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments?
How are we tracking on the budget on this?
So we are roughly right now just under 150,000 under budget. This will obviously take some of that away, and we do have a few other things that we need to finalize, but we're still on track to be able to return about $100,000.
Great.
All right. If there's no more questions or comments, I can take a motion.
I move the board vote to approve change order number 5 of the Grafton Common Improvements Project and authorize the chair to sign.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor by roll call.
Often aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, aye.
Fully aye.
Mead eye.
Okay. Declare the motion carried. Thank you for coming in tonight.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks, Paul.
Up next is the Blackstone Needs Assessment Resolution. Evan will just give us a quick recap on that.
Yep, so the resolution is in the packet as well as the assessments, but I'll give you kind of the 35,000 foot overview because it's a lot of material. So essentially what you are being asked to resolve is the things that are in the whereases, which basically boil down to being good stewards of the Blackstone, adopting practices that are environmentally friendly that keep things out of the Blackstone, and supporting cleanup efforts and wildlife rehabilitation efforts. And those are kind of the key tenets that I saw in their report, which we're already doing by and large with a lot of our stormwater projects that we're doing now. We're using things like rain gardens, what they call nature-based solutions. We've also been working through the MS4 program with some phosphorus reduction techniques and some other things to try to clean that before any water gets released. So, you know, by and large, I think it is a good resolution for the board to adopt. I did not see anything in the draft that they had sent over that I would think would be contradictory to what this board generally resolves. So I can go line by line through it, or
Well, does anybody have any questions or comments? And we'll just start there.
I mean, it looked pretty straightforward to me. This is one of those issues that requires coordination from many, many towns, and historically, I think, has been difficult. Which is, you know, this organization has been pretty strong advocates for the Blackstone, and you know, I applaud the work that they've done for sure. But it is going to require a lot of coordination between towns. So I didn't see anything in particular that concerned me. We're also doing a lot of this already in terms of the you know, trash removal and you know, some of the water management efforts that we've already undertaken and whatnot. So I don't see this as a big stretch at all, and clearly we want to protect our waterways, so I'm good with it.
yeah, we actually had a meeting today about water chestnuts and the potential to create a regional asset that we'd be able to get a grant under the community compact to purchase to remove water chestnuts, which is definitely a key issue with the Blackstone. So I mean, we are doing a lot of this, and we're having these conversations, which I think puts, you know, Grafton in a good spot as far as adopting a resolution. It's not going to be a massive, you know, cultural shift in what we're already doing, but I think it's a good way to support not only continuing the management of the Blackstone, but also, you know, sending the message to the other communities along the Blackstone that we're doing this, and you know, you should too.
Absolutely.
So we didn't have anyone participating though. Is that correct? Like, was someone from the town?
Not
Necessarily.
No, I believe our conservation commission, or our conservation commissioner, conservation agent, I knew it was, I was gonna get there, was, working with folks along, creating the needs assessment.
Okay.
And then they asked us, once the needs assessment was completed, to adopt a resolution that basically says we're gonna abide by, what it says in the assessment.
Okay. That's all we have for questions and comments. I can take a motion.
I move the board vote to adopt the Blackstone Needs Assessment Resolution.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor by roll call.
Often I.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, I.
Fully aye.
Need I?
Declare the motion carried. You having fun? All right, up next is the Environmental Sustainability Committee, and this is something Anne Marie asked to put on the agenda.
Yeah, thank you. So just a little teeny quick background. A number of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I'd thought about trying to start some sort of environmental or sustainability committee in town, and decided instead to just kind of do it more at a grassroots level. So doing some citizens petitions at town meeting, starting the Green Up Grafton Facebook page, and, you know, just trying to garner some energy in that way. And then, you know, meeting with different people in town. Through the League of Women Voters, we have a lot of folks that are talking about different things in terms of sustainability. So I just felt that at this point, we recently, in the last town meeting, passed the tar, something related to the
Coal tar asphalt.
Thank you, the coal tar asphalt. But that's kind of one thing that I've been thinking about, and the gentleman that was really involved in that has been reaching out, you know, in terms of how do we push that out and you know, get the word out. So there's like little things like that, and the composting, in addition to larger things, of course, that we could be doing, that I just thought that if we had a dedicated committee in town that could start tackling these issues, and also looking at the, you know, the bigger picture, how do we reduce greenhouse gases, in the town of Grafton? How do we even, measure where we are at right now and potentially set some benchmarks? Certainly going last night then to the solar panel thing up in Estabrook has certainly motivated me, but we had put this on the agenda obviously previously, but innovations like that the town of Grafton could be maybe at the forefront of pushing things out. So when I look at other communities, some communities have either an environmental committee or sustainable committee or something along those lines. Other towns have done kind of what I feel like I've been trying to do, is just a little bit more grassroots, not official. And I just thought that obviously you guys know climate change, environmental concerns are a big thing for myself and my family. So I just feel like, I know not everyone agrees that, there's big issues, but for me, we need to take bigger, bolder steps sooner, in my opinion. So I'm just coming to the board to see what your take is on creating a new committee. Trust me, I'm not somebody that looks for, meetings and committees just for the sake of it, but I do think that this could be beneficial, and we could look at, I know that there was a correspondence that came in today from Doreen, which was a good point, including planning, somebody from planning potentially. I know they're out straight, but as we were getting going, I thought certainly somebody from Select Board, School Committee, DPW, potentially a student member, and then certainly at large folks.
Pulling the charge up.
And I will say that from this it's just a Facebook page, and I don't like to talk about, Facebook necessarily, but I will tell you that there is a lot of folks out there that are interested in a variety of things. I have somebody that reaches out to me consistently about invasive species, so there are pockets of folks out there that are willing to tackle things, and I think if we could try to coordinate it more centrally, that would be fabulous. And maybe we can, any of these, like the climate action plan, if that were something that we wanted to look at going down that road, I mean, all of these things, the green communities, it opens us up to opportunities for grants, right? So that's a positive things in terms of, we're not looking to just try to spend money, but trying to get more grant money in town for electric chargers, maybe solar, things like that. So Colleen I just kind of sent out some points to her, and she kind of came up with a little bit more of a format for me, so I thank you. But here's a idea of a charge, and I guess I'll leave it to if anyone has any questions.
Okay. Go for it.
So just one thing, we are a green community
Yes.
already.
Yep.
So we'll have to,
Noted.
you'd have to tweak that.
Yeah.
And I think that the climate action plan is part of our municipal vulnerability plan. And I saw that on there, and unfortunately I did not have a chance to go that deep into it.
Yeah. I was just spitballing for lack of a better term.
Yes, and I'm not. I don't want to. I'm not trying to pick it all apart. I was just saying, like, I think we have some of those pieces, but where they are and how actively they're looked at, green communities is something that we definitely actively participate in. And MVP is something which is municipal vulnerability plan, is something that we're getting there. We have the plans, and we've done a lot of stuff. We haven't really gotten our feet wet with grants. We tried to actually do an MVP for invasives, which we were not awarded to, which got us into this kind of regional thinking. But that's all. I just wanted to.
Fair enough. Yep.
I'd also know that there's MVPs available for like a environmental crisis action plan for your community, which would be in addition to the hazard mitigation plan that does have an environmental component to it. It'd be far more in depth.
I did help Doreen years ago over in Sutton with doing their plan. That was certainly much more in depth.
So you've mentioned Doreen a couple times, and I will say she brought this exact committee to the board when she was on it in 2019. The board spent several months crafting a charge, and they adopted it in 2020, and by 2021 it was dissolved because of lack of interest. They couldn't get anybody on it. And through that, they formed the Waste Reduction and Recycling Committee, and that had taken off, and then it went through a little lull, losing Mr. Fazio, but I know that they're meeting again this week. So in my opinion, I think these are all great goals, but I think it can be really encompassed in the committee we already have. I don't think we need a separate committee to do this, especially seeing how we've attempted this committee already. I think we should, work within what we have to try to obtain some of these goals. And then if it gets too much, then expand out. Or if we get a big crisis action plan from the MVP down the line, do like the fire study committee and have that committee take it apart kind of thing. That's my opinion on that.
Should we look at the charge of the existing committee and see if it could be broadened a little bit to include some of Emery's ideas?
I think so. I think that's a great,
I will say that committee hadn't met until this upcoming meeting in a number of years, right?
no,
Month.
just a couple months.
Oh,
They met earlier this year, actually.
or maybe they just weren't minutes or something when I looked.
Yeah, I think we should bring back the waste, recycle, and reduction charge, because we've been doing that, looking at committee charges and seeing what kind of updating and sprucing. It's been about 18 months since it was formed, maybe a little under. And maybe see who the chair is and have the chair come in and see where they're at and check in with them. I think they are supposed to provide an annual report, so I don't know if we've ever seen one, so that's probably a good time to check in with that committee as well, and maybe try to put some of these ideas in with that.
I'd support that. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good idea. There's obviously a fair amount of work to do, and it would help to have an official town body be, responsible for it and have the charge and scope to be able to work on it. But I do share your concern about, just participation. So we need to make sure that it's active and engaged.
And I believe there is an opening on that committee too. So if Amory, if you had people lined up for this committee looking to get involved, that committee, has space to
I think
take people on.
what I'm looking at is a much broader scope than what I thought the Waste Reduction and Recycling Committee I mean, I'm just looking at their, I guess maybe the charge. I'm not looking at recycling. I'm not talking about recycling at all. Like that ship has sailed. Waste reduction, I think could be part of something if someone else is doing it in town. That's fair enough. I'm looking at, greater environmental concerns. So I think what if the board was not open to forming such a committee, then perhaps I would go the route of like a Shrewsbury or other towns where we would just do it as an informal group. Not, yeah. That would be my thought, I think. Based on what I know of the Waste Reduction and Recycling Committee, I did not know of another committee that had been formed with the same charge. So that I know that you had mentioned it to me, Colleen, but I didn't realize that was out there somewhere and that it just never got off the ground. Because I feel like there's an appetite for it, but perhaps I surround myself with folks that have an appetite for it. So it's fine. It's to the board's pleasure. I'd be disappointed certainly, but
Well, I guess what I'm suggesting is we would look at the Waste Recycling Committee charge and update it. And just check in with them to make sure that they'd be okay with that additional scope. But presumably if, people are interested in recycling, they'd also be aligned with the broader program that you're talking about. That was my thinking. The alternative would be to craft this committee and then fold in the waste recycling. So it's sort of
right.
It's this, but I think you're going to probably get the same group of people that would be interested in those topics.
Is there on the website? Does it list who is on it, or I don't see it?
Are you looking for the waste reduction? I'm just gonna keep calling it the WRR. I had it all printed out.
I can tell you.
And I didn't. Oh, there you go. There's our representative. Tell us all about it, please.
Yep. Right now, I'm a member. Maura McCormick, Sherilyn Reno, and Kevin Gallagher. Doreen was our chair. We kind of stalled a little earlier this year. We were supposed to meet with E.L. Harvey to go over the contracts, and there was a death in the family that they had to postpone, and then we got into election season, and it's just kind of been a little dormant since. But yes, we do have a meeting coming up. I don't know if I mentioned Doreen had been the chair, so that was kind of difficult in the loss. But yeah, we're gonna meet. We're gonna reorganize. I think you know, the group would generally be open to expanding the charge to include some of these things. For me personally, I think I think I see and understand what you're trying to do here, and it just gets down to a point of, I guess, defining what the committee handles themselves, because there seems to be a lot of overlap with a lot of these things. That it would involve things that the planning board does, things that, you know, Evan may handle. You know, I don't know that it would get into bylaws so much, but just I think that level of top line coordination could be difficult in dealing with some of those things beyond some of the more tangible things you hit on. I think were things like outreach and getting information out there, more information and probably better information about some of the programs that Grafton does currently offer, or you know, also trying to get additional people involved in town government and something they're passionate about in these areas, which I think is a great way for everybody in general to learn. You know, when somebody gets passionate about something, that's when they come to, you know, share that information. So I don't know, I guess it's, for lack of a better term, defining the deliverable for this committee and what they would, you know, ultimately do that would be different from, I know there are differences on here from you know, waste reduction and recycling, but to,
Yeah, like, I mean,
Can
recycling's
we
not,
look at the waste reduction recycling charge?
Yep.
I'm looking at it on my phone, and there's a lot of overlap, as Andy was saying, and it might be hitting on a lot of what Anne Marie is trying to accomplish already with this committee. You know, develop and present recommendations to the select board regarding cost savings methods and current best practices for the community and the end user. Develop and implement educational tools to help the end user and the community understand how to utilize new best practices. You know, try to go after grants, town-wide composting program, and any roadblocks that end users might encounter. So, I mean, a lot of that's in this committee.
when I read it, it just all related to recycling and trash. So it had nothing to do with actually what I'm talking about. But you could certainly broaden the scope. It would be really broadening it. Because I think, again, recycling, you know, that ship has sailed. And waste reduction, you know, we need to think about it, certainly.
But like this is talking about the composting program, like you're saying, like this committee handles that.
Great.
So that can help, you know, I know you're.
Because I feel like I've been.
Right, so like this is a committee that can help you, you know,
Okay.
Get it going.
I think maybe we should discuss expanding the number of members in waste reduction as well. If we do have interest,
Yep.
you know, I think the more hands we can have in this, the better to help out and keep it at the forefront, you know, and keep it active.
So the committee is meeting again soon. That could be something for the committee to discuss to see about how they would feel about increasing the membership. But then we can always bring this back at a future meeting and talk about expanding it even ourselves, because, you know, if there's a lot of people, like you were saying in the Facebook group, that want to do this, you know, it's available to do. We have it.
So just, that's fine. I understand. I hear you. I get it. We're not going to do it, but, or it'll be a different way. I'm talking about like reducing greenhouse gases. First of all, assessing where we are with greenhouse gases and how do we come up with reduction. Environmental sustainability, you know, resource conservation. I think that it maybe in that blurb, waste seemed to maybe come up in terms of the charge, but that certainly wasn't my intent at all. So that's great. We can, you know, obviously we're not going to move in this direction, but just so you know, I'm looking at a much bigger scope of climate action than waste reduction and recycling.
But is that something that committee would have the opportunity to impact, I guess would be my question, without, you know, because the types of sweeping change that we're talking about are going to require, you know, I think an increase in efforts on the town administrator's end, you know, planning, possibly, you know, zoning help in there. I guess that was my point, was that it you really need more top level people involved to, you know, to make that change rather than it being something that the committee themselves can handle. And maybe I'm thinking about it wrong.
Well, I was hoping to be the exact opposite, because as Evan can probably attest to, that each time I meet with him, I'm talking a lot about these things and putting them, asking for his support or his staff support on it. So I actually was thinking the opposite, that we get a great committee made up of folks from all different, facets that can take the ball and run. So say on the tar thing, like, let's make the little handout. Let's contact all of basically what I'm asking, kind of Evan to do every other week on these issues, the composting, taking things and running with it. So again, we can look at that through this other committee. It would be a very different charge in terms of what I was thinking of in this particular committee. And you're absolutely right. This is what we need to do, in my opinion, requires huge action, so that my grandchildren, I don't want to get all preachy, but that my grandchildren have water. So I live it from the moment I wake up every day. So you're absolutely right. It's a big thing. It's a big nut, and somebody needs to take it on. Not just how can we recycle more, because that's not working. We're just burning it. So
Ray does have his hand up.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so, since you brought up the waste and recycling, reduction in the recycling committee, and then I listened to what Anne Marie's talking about, it's two different things. And we shouldn't shoot something down because it didn't work before with a different group of people. I think in Anne Marie, we have someone who's motivated to do this and to get this to get this committee together and to get it working. And I really think, and Anne Marie, you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but it would be really great, I think, if you came back at the next meeting or another meeting or something and said, okay, here's the charge for this committee. And what do you think of this charge? Because I don't think it's going to relate to waste and recycling at all. So I don't think we should, throw out the baby with the bathwater here. But, I think that Anne Marie, if you'd be, interested in that and coming back with a charge at another meeting, I'd be more than happy to entertain that. So
I can tweak it or, work on it more. I didn't work on this very much. So, and hopefully over the next, month or two, I'll have more time. But, if the board is interested, I don't want to spin my wheels either. And I understand what you're saying. There's this committee, we can kind of hop on over there, but it really, in my mind, is just such a different charge altogether. Yes, years ago, recycling, let's get the bigger bins, let's look at waste reduction. But in my opinion, what I want to do is far beyond that,
What I would hate to see happen, though, is what has already taken place, where somebody was extremely passionate about it, got it off the ground, and then it floundered. I'd rather give you the tools to succeed so it doesn't flounder a second time, and that's why I was thinking in the spring when the MVP grant opens up, if we can get approved for an environmental crisis action plan and then pull it apart similar to the fire department study and have a committee doing that, that helps you take that really big bite of the apple that you're attempting rather than throwing a bunch of volunteers in a room and saying, okay, let's save the world, which it's difficult. That's why, saving the world's hard. We do have this existing committee that covers several aspects. I know you view it differently. So I think we should work with what we have and get some more tools before we just create another committee and essentially burn out the volunteers we have that are passionate about this. Okay. So I guess where the board seems split, the last we were saying was to bring back the waste reduction and recycling charge to review that. I've heard some board members say they want to bring back a whole different charge. So I guess we'll just take a straw poll vote as to what members want to do, both or one or the other. And that way we know what to do for a future agenda item.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Matt, Ray.
I don't think we have enough information to take a straw poll here. I think that again, if Anne Marie is more than willing to put together a charge, I think then we can look at both charges and then take a straw poll on how the board feels. It's really, I mean, it's not going to cost us anything, so let's give it a shot.
Well, we do have a charge
my
in front of
opinion.
us, Ray. She did put together a charge already. Now, if she wants to tweak that, but she also says she doesn't want to waste her time spinning her wheels either. So we're just trying to grab some direction of what to do.
So what I did was I
All
put
in favor.
some ideas on paper, and then Colleen, and I appreciate you doing it, but you kind of created the charge, and granted, I looked at it, but
It's your words. I just formatted it. That's all I
Yeah.
did was format it.
but I'm happy to, I'll leave it up to you guys, I guess. Like I said, I think either way, there's towns that do this in a more informal basis. So I would envision that either way, I'm probably going to, push forward.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a sense of what the board wants to do going forward.
Sure. Well, I want to do this.
I'd like to see it refined and come back for another discussion.
Okay. So does that mean you both don't want to talk about looking at the waste reduction and recycling charge? You
I
just
mean, I'm not
rather,
opposed to that either, but
So both. okay.
So my way of looking at the charge was to say, let's look at an existing charge and amend it. But what I'm trying to get to is something that would fulfill Anne Marie's vision of this committee. Whether that's a new charge or an existing charge, we have to discuss what this committee would actually do, its membership, its deliverables and scope and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not bothered either way, whether we looked at an existing charge and amend it, or whether we look at a brand new charge and then consider whether it makes sense to take an existing committee and fold it in, dissolve that committee and basically ask it to participate in this new committee. So either way, to me, it's sort of 6 1 half dozen of another. I really, what I would like to see though is I'd like to see perhaps, Anne Marie, it sounds like you've done some research in this area. I'd love to see for the towns that do have a more formal town body, what are they doing? What do their charges look like? So that we have a little bit more of a template to go by, I suppose.
Sure.
So,
Like Westboro is a good example. So Westboro has a more formal committee, and then Shrewsbury, they're kind of more of an ad hoc committee. And just so you know, I'm not saying that the waste committee, it might be coming off like that, that
No,
committee,
I didn't take it that
yeah,
way at all.
nothing to do with that committee at all. I did look up, I know what they're about. I remember when we, formed that committee back when we were looking at the tip fees and et cetera. So
No, I was going to make a similar point. I think that,
I'm not dissing that committee, just FYI.
no, that even, things have changed on the municipal side since that committee was formed and how we're handling our
Right.
our waste removal and whatnot. So, realistically, it's possible that that committee explores a few things and then runs into a wall and really isn't able to do too much more when it comes to that charge of reducing fees and whatnot. The principal charges, I guess, of that committee, in which case, maybe it does make sense to kind of fold an outreach arm into a new committee. I not trying to put the cart before the horse or anything, but I don't know that the waste reduction committee is something that's meant to be, how long it's meant to go on, I guess I should say. If there's going to be kind of an end date to that. Making sense?
Okay, so Anne Marie's gonna work to put together a more robust proposal for us to review in the future, and we can still take a look at the waste reduction and recycling charge also in the future. That's the sense I'm getting.
Sounds great. Fair enough.
Any other questions or comments on this before we move on?
No, I will just, I guess, repeat that waste reduction is going to meet this week. We did post the agenda. We're going to reorganize. We were going to discuss the charge, just kind of refresh, recommit to some of the tasks that we had laid out earlier in the year. And if you'd like us to come before the select board and touch base. I think everybody'd be happy to do that too. So.
I think that's in your charge, so we can figure that out. That'd be good. Okay, up next is the Grafton Upton Railroad update with Evan.
Yep. So after we discussed this a few meetings back, I was able to talk with Mike Milanowski from Grafton Upton Railroad a little bit more about some of the background that I felt that we were missing at that meeting. Things that just weren't evident to me in watching the previous meetings. So one of them being, it was a little convoluted to figure out whose study was telling us what. And so Grafton Upton Railroad commissioned their engineer to redesign that intersection as primarily to make things easier from the railroad standpoint. However, with conversations with the town, learned that we were also looking for this whistle-free zone, quiet zone. And so they asked their engineer to develop the A, B, and C model that we had talked about. A model being minimal, B being somewhere in the middle, and C being the one that included the one-way on East Street. They then also had it reviewed. The town used PAR, who was the ones that did the plan that we just saw from Mr. Knoyer, to review the efficacy of that and whether it would do what the engineer for Grafton Upton Railroad said it would. The third thing that was a portion of that was they worked with representatives from FRA, which is the Federal Rail Administration, to review A, B, and C, and to try to, well, they won't guarantee anything, try to get a consensus on, yes, if you did, X, you will have, you'll be eligible to do this quiet zone. And of those, the only one that met that criteria would have been option C, which is why there was such a strong push at the time for that one way on East Street for those 10 houses. The other thing that I don't think I explained well at the last meeting, but when I went back and reviewed, is pretty evident, is that by taking one leg out of the input of that intersection, you actually gain other efficiencies as well, because people coming out of East Street into that intersection, that happens far less frequently than all of the other turns that are happening up there. And so by eliminating that leg, you then gain some pretty strong efficiencies as far as cars that you're trying to move through the intersection. So you also get that a little bit with the light coordination that we've been talking about. You're definitely going to see some improvements there, but probably a diminished return as removing one whole input to a intersection. So all things being equal, if the board wanted to pursue the quiet zone, the process would be we'd have to get with Mr. Knoyer to work with PAR to re-engineer some of that intersection. There's a little bit, we're already doing, looking at, I'm not an engineer, but looking at the plans, it seems like we're already doing most of the widening. There'd be some little bit different change to the curbing between, or at that kind of corner of East Street there. And then, we'd have to do the lane marking and everything to make East Street one direction to that first crossroad, which is eluding me at the current time, but Prospect, yes. I was gonna say that, and I didn't want to sound like I didn't know what I'm talking about. I should have just ran with it. So Prospect Street.
Then how do you get to 140 then? That Prospect comes out to there?
So you'd have to take.
Or the other one that goes behind Post Office Pub, and
then you come
Is
up
that's Ray Street, right?
It might be.
yeah, I think it's Ray
It
when
goes
it
down
goes
and
up,
then-
but it's something else when it like Harrison maybe when it comes across.
No, I was right. Just say you were right.
I'm only asking because I wonder
Yes.
then what the impact is
So the
over there.
right. So there's some neighborhood impact. However, looking at the study, the traffic study, they felt that would be it's more of a negligible impact because there's not as many cars coming out of East Street. and that people would jump over to the other leg, as opposed to, trying to squirrel themselves away in there.
There may not be as many cars coming out of East Street, but it would make an absolute nightmare for the cars that are attempting to get out of East Street at that point. It is, because you see people trying to avoid the light by going over towards the post office pub entrance and cutting around that way and trying to come, across traffic to make a left. Only exacerbates the issue. And I don't think either of the Prospect or Ray are nearly wide enough to accommodate the increase in traffic that they're going to see if we switch it to one way. And I'm admittedly biased because this is my area of town and would impact me greatly. But East Street over to Institute, over to Weston sees a lot of traffic go through headed towards both the train station and over towards Westboro. I agree that cars coming off it are definitely, significantly fewer than off the other two roadways, but during peak traffic hours, it's still incredibly difficult getting off East, and making it one way is only going to make that exit even more difficult.
I think like someone said last week, it's the people that will benefit from maybe it was you that would, from the quiet zone will also be impacted negatively by in addition to other folks, obviously, but
there's no magic bullet.
No.
You have an intersection that, presumably was designed for horse and buggy that you've now turned into a major intersection for 20,000 residents. So there's in order to gain the efficiencies of the quiet zone and moving traffic off of 140, that would be the pain that you would need to endure.
Ray is not on mute. So the one way would be traffic would come in towards 140, but not away from it.
Then come
opposite-
off 140
opposite.
onto East, you'd be able to make that left or right and
So if
head
you're-
down East this
right.
way, but not come back out to 140 from
Okay.
the opposite
On
direction.
East, right. For the first, it impacts 10 houses.
Yeah, if you just went, you would see okay.
Right. Directly, and I realize there's an indirect, of people that come up East Street.
Okay.
So we are going to gain some efficiencies with what we're already doing, but to get your quiet zone and a two-legged intersection, that's what you'd have to do.
So, Madam Chair?
Yep.
So, and I know we've done this before, but I think we really need to have a public meeting on this and listen to the people who live in the neighborhood and find out what the biggest issue is. Is the issue that East Street's going to be one way, or is the issue that the train horn's going to go away? And prior to us making a decision or moving forward past this point, I think that's something that we should do.
I don't disagree. We just did that, December, I think, 2019. I guess it doesn't hurt. Maybe 3 years of the horns has changed opinions, and maybe a one-way wouldn't be so bad for those people. I don't know. I would be in support of that.
So I had kind of casually spoken to Evan about a different issue, because further down 140 as you approach Bridge Street by Washington Mills, and then where 122 and 140 connect after that, we have two traffic lights there, and it's been my understanding anyways that we've had difficulties in the past, setting some of the traffic patterns for those two lights because they impact this intersection as well, and vice versa. And coming through there in the afternoon commute, it backs up quickly. I think you get a lot of people coming off Route 30, Waterville Street there, that crowd the box in the intersection, so that, it makes it harder to get off East Street. That light tends to be shorter. People also try and cut over there thinking that they're going to, avoid the big line, or they cut across Prospect and come over Ray Street. Still, I'm sympathetic to the needs of the people who are having whistle issues there. But I feel like, it's a solution that creates two, real big pinch points in terms of the traffic flow that go through there and are going to cause us more issues than it's going to fix.
Is there a way to temporarily make it a one-way just to see what it feels like? Like when they do road construction, right? Like nothing substantial, but like let's say we'll take 2 weeks and see how it feels.
I'm gonna say tentatively yes, but I honestly don't know. I mean, it seems like something we should be able to do. There's the uniform traffic code. I'm not an expert on that, so I'd have to reach out to.
Sure, there's a pothole on there that
Chief
take
Crapo.
2 weeks to fix.
I mean, we block roads all the time.
You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly.
But we don't want to, Chris Christie got in trouble for a similar thing.
True.
Causing traffic. But
Don't do it on a holiday weekend.
right, exactly. No, the shorter answer is I don't know, but I believe that there's a way that you can temporarily alter a traffic pattern to study its effects. I don't know if we can just do that or if that needs to be part of a commissioned study. I honestly have never done that, at least not purposely.
But I think that could help make a more informed decision too when the neighbor's like, oh, you know what? That wasn't that bad. And it's going to get rid of my horns. I'm all about it. Versus an unknown of,
Yep.
That sounds like it stinks. I don't know. I don't want to do that either.
So I can certainly bring that to Chief Crapo and Paul.
Okay.
Have that conversation.
It's Chief Repo? No. Okay. Any other questions or comments on what we're hearing? So should we try to schedule a public outreach meeting or public outreach? Is that what the board would like to do?
Well, I think even if you were going to do something temporary, which I think isn't a bad idea, you'd probably have to notify
Oh, yeah.
all those folks.
Yeah, I
So maybe
think
an outreach and include that. Here's a potential idea.
Yeah, if you want to do another outreach meeting, I honestly would ask that you do it in November, because we have town meeting in October.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We're kicking off the budget. We're kicking off the capital plan. We got a lot of time sensitive things. So if the board's amenable to a November, we could do it maybe in the new room at the library. Certainly amenable to that. I just want to get us to the other side of town meeting.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of November. It was December last time, so it's very similar feel to, almost 3 years between the two meetings. So, yeah. Do you need to take a motion for that, or we can just say
We can just head in that
tentatively?
direction if everybody's amenable to that.
Okay.
Ray, how does November sound for a forum outreach?
Oh, no, that sounds great. I mean,
Okay.
the discussion that we've had is that this is not going to be a quick process. It's not going to be fast. It's going to take some time, but we're going to try to solve the problem. So if we start going through the process of solving the problem, then yeah, whatever time it takes, it's going to take.
All right, perfect. So that's where we'll leave that for now. Up next is the review the draft warrant.
Oh boy, that time already.
So does anybody have any specific questions or comments?
Can I add? Let me just do a little primer. So this is a very draft version of the warrant that William's been working on. There are some things on there that will likely be tweaked in some fairly major ways, most likely around. There's a rec article that we're having trouble understanding the full intent of. And there is an article that needs to be reworked for that septic betterment process that we're also trying to get our hands around whether, or just, we've got some things to work out there. I was thinking that for the purposes of this, if any of you have specific questions or have read it and saw something that was outside of what you expected to see, you could let us know. Will can certainly run through the whole thing. But the other thing that'll happen is Chris McGoldrick is going to come in on the 20th and go through that planning section. It's a can't change to the cannabis bylaw. And usually CPC comes in and talks about their bylaw. So I think you're gonna get a lot of there's nothing on here that, in my opinion, is overtly controversial. There's no major things from the town side that I think are going to be beyond the pale. They're kind of routine things that we're doing.
Yeah, seemed like from the draft agenda for next week that most of those people would be in front of us, like you said. So explain their warrant articles a little better.
Yep. What we're trying to do this time, and this is a feedback that we had gotten before, is a lot of times when we're closing the warrant on the 20th, and that's when you see the draft or the close to final product. And so we're trying to get, even though this is extremely rough, trying to just get it in front of you so that you understand kind of the breadth of what we're looking at, and if anything flagged out for you, like where did this even come from, you would have ample time to bring that to our attention, and we could either rework it or explain it or whatever we needed to do.
Perfect.
Is that fair? Okay.
Thank you.
Good. That's it.
Okay.
Saved you a lot of talking there.
Sure did.
You can buy me a burrito next week.
All right.
Anything for you, buddy?
Next is to schedule the annual goals retreat and just have a general discussion about that. So I don't know if anybody has a date or a location in mind that they're thinking, or thoughts on how they want to do it. The first goals retreat was at the South Grafton Meeting House, and it was catered. The second goals retreat was at the Lions Club outside because it was kind of peak COVID, vaccines weren't out yet. Last goals retreat was upstairs in room G. So we've done all different versions of it. I'm not sure what kind of goals retreat this board would like to do.
I think you should do it at the library.
I love the idea of utilizing the library.
Personally.
Like the
We'll
community
get a
room
piano
or
player.
Can you schedule a room?
What did you say, Matt?
the community room or
Yes.
one of the conference rooms?
No, I would do it in the community room because it's got all the AV stuff in there that we like to utilize.
Okay.
And the only thing I would ask, that the thing that was kind of a drag when your last goals meeting is that you started a select board meeting, so we did some stuff down here and then we went upstairs. Like it has to be its own, I think it should just be its own night.
Yep, I agree.
That's my only feedback.
I agree.
And it would be great if we could do that in November or December as well.
Okay.
So we can get on the other side of town meeting.
Let's do it on the 18th of October.
I'm calling in.
I was gonna go for my birthday, but that is not gonna work for you. I don't know. So how does November 17th sound for everybody? Just a different day of the week. It's the week before Thanksgiving. Hopefully people are still hanging around before they all take off. Or
I don't think I'm going to be here then.
okay.
Just have to go down and help my in-laws.
So would like the week before November 10th be better for you? Or I mean, if Thursday's not ideal at all, do you guys want to
No,
do
Thursdays.
Wednesdays?
It's just that I know I have to be at a doctor's appointment in Florida. Believe it or not.
Okay, so November 10th sounds pretty good for most people?
Sure.
Phenomenal. Okay. Can you guys try to secure the library and talk to GCTV to get all that all lined up for us?
Sure.
Thank you. And then, still publicly posted, people can attend if they want.
Yep, we'll have it set up so that, like we did in G, so that the board has kind of their area and then there's an audience area, and then we'll do some fun activities.
Perfect. Okay, so that's all set. The other thing I wanted to mention was that throughout the years of doing this goals retreat, it has left kind of a large result that, even this year we've seen there's just a lot of staff time and a lot of trying to achieve all of the goals. And I was going to recommend that maybe each board member come with 1 or 2 goals and just try to tailor it down a little bit and see where we go from there, and then blow it up if we need to, but make it more achievable in 12 months when we have all of the other things that we do. I didn't know what you guys felt about that.
You mean bring 1 to 2 new goals, or just it can be something that's already on the list, and just more or less prioritizing what's a goal for you.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine if each of us brought one or two goals, you're going to see overlap, right? So if we all brought two completely different goals, at the end of the day, it's 10 goals that we're going to be asking department heads and everybody to help us to achieve. But at the end of the day, it could also end up where we have five, but five really good ones that we can focus on and crank out quicker. So that was just my vision for it this year. And of course, once it starts, it can go a whole nother direction. I just didn't want people showing up with a list of 25 times 5, you know what I mean? And
Right.
now we're holy cow. So I just wanted to give a little bit of guidance going into it. But if everybody thinks that's dumb, tell me, and we don't have to do it.
Sounds good.
I just think it's going to be a conversation, so I'm going to bring however many I'm going to bring, and we'll discuss it. But I think, you know, what we've done in the past, I think maybe we just be a little bit more rigorous with it, which is to recognize that we can only take on a certain amount, understanding staff time and our own kind of energy and responsibilities, so that, you know, we're not taking on too much for the upcoming year, and we just spread it out if we end up with too much. So I'm happy either way.
Okay. Ray, do you have any thoughts about the goals meeting?
Yeah, I mean, we put together a lot last year. And, you know, obviously we're going to review that. We're going to review last year's, but I like the idea of bringing as many as you want, you know, 2 or 3 or 4, whatever it is, as long as we can produce something out of it. That's all I want to do. And I thought last year's meeting was really, really good. It was, you know, the food wasn't that good, but, you know, everything else was fine.
All right, well, don't get us the food that's not that good then.
There was no food.
I feel like I missed
Food makes people hang around, Deni. There's one other thought that I have that I'll share, because I think that your goals meetings have been great, but your goals productivity has not been, because we get off on all these tangents almost immediately with all these side projects. So the other thing the board could consider is to meet, you know, and this requires some dedication, but some, you know, November, December, January, February, and instead of doing one goals meeting, doing a compressed strategic planning process where we would set, you know, the town's mission and vision and then build off of what we think that is, which may give you a more refined product to then send department heads to be rowing in the same direction. Just a thought.
That doesn't hurt to try. I mean, each goals process has transformed year after year. So I'd be in favor of trying that. I don't know how everybody else feels.
I certainly like the notion of looking at the vision, you know, the town's vision, the board's vision, which can certainly include goals that are tangible, but really more the, like you said, we're all rowing in the same direction, general direction. Yeah, I like that.
So I guess my concern is, I'm fine with that. I guess reflecting on what you were saying, Evan, whatever we end up with for sort of next year's objectives, as we decide, you know, we want to add things that are not aligned, I guess, with our objectives, we should be agreeing as a board to kick stuff out, so that we have a list that we're working towards, that isn't just this anybody can bring in anything that they want, and have that take away from the objectives that the board's agreed. That's more my concern, I guess, and just thinking about what you were saying, because I think you're right. We've done a ton of work this year, and you know, and I really appreciate the work that staff's put towards supporting us and whatnot. But it has been a little, at times feels like we have things that have kind of come out of not from a place of being driven by our objectives, I guess. So.
Right. I think I think about this will be real quick, I promise. There was I had a CEO at a nonprofit, and she was driven out by the board, and they replaced her with a turnaround guy. He was only there for 6 months. His name is Mike Coughlin. And we did a full-blown strategic planning. I mean, it was huge. It was 600 employees. I mean, it was a big deal. But one of the coolest things that I felt came out of that was we had picked 5 words that represented the organization, and then we had set a mission and vision. And then pretty much everything he did involved that in some way. And it became a really common thread throughout the organization. You know, the 5 words, and they were painted over doorways in the building and stuff. And the staff really got involved in it, which made achieving the goals of the other part of the strategic plan easier because they tied directly back towards that mission and vision, right? This is who we want to be as an organization and a culture, and all of these goals are going to support that. And I thought I really it was a total sweeping organizational change in 6 months.
It feels like if we're after something like that, we would need more of participation from department heads. Because to me, if I were to, try to affect cultural change, I would want their buy-in, which means, these, if we were to contemplate things like that, right? So mission statements, vision, words, those types of things, those would need to be arrived at with some participation from just
yes, it wouldn't
not
just
the board.
It can't just be the 5 of you in a
Yeah.
room to set it.
Exactly.
It's participatory as opposed to a top-down approach.
Got it. Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I like it.
Okay, so we'll head in that direction starting in November. Game planning that will meet.
Yep.
Yeah,
We will
one more
put
time.
together a outline of what would take place at each meeting.
So
The
should we
exercises and
call
the-
it strategic planning instead of goals now, just so that,
I would.
okay.
I just don't think your goals have been effective or executed effectively. And so maybe we could try something different.
Elliot.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, up next is select board reports. Does anybody have anything they would like to report?
I can. We had a library building and planning committee meeting last night. We're basically down to the same 5 punch list items that we've been for the last couple months, which are wrapping up the lower safety gate at the bottom of the stairs. They just finished up with the HVAC controls, and we're waiting for the consultant to sign off on those. So the last time we talked about it, there was a leak in the community room that they were having trouble tracking down and figuring out where it was coming in, but we weren't getting any rain, so that was a huge issue. And then we got all this rain, and no leaks happened. So somebody's probably going to be in touch with you about
Yep, I already got an email.
setting up a flood test to try and
Yep.
figure that out and
Yep.
get it addressed. The humidifier for the historic documents room continues to be kind of an issue with conflicting info we get from the manufacturer. Redoing some doors for the teen space area too, because they were originally spec'd to be wood. They wouldn't open wide enough as a single panel for ADA compliance, so they were switched to a bifold, and then we changed materials, and the installation quotes haven't been great. There's been a long lead time on materials. So good news, work is scheduled to start this month to adjust counter heights for ADA compliance. And Historic District Commission needs to reach out to the building inspector because there's some back and forth over moving the restored weights and measurements cabinet over there.
Mhm.
So
I can help close that loop. I saw some
be appreciated.
correspondence going back and forth.
Nice. I'll just add that everybody sitting up here attended the Celebrate Grafton Solar at Knowlton Farm last night, and that was really informative and pretty incredible to see. And yeah, agrovoltaics is a pretty awesome word I'm going to try to use as often as possible. I don't know if I just used it right, but I'm going to try. I don't know if
yeah,
you guys wanted to.
it's an amazing project. amazing and happening right here in town. You know, like worldwide implications. Can't say enough good things about that.
So I guess just to summarize it, this is on Estabrook Road. It's on the Knowlton property in coordination with the Knowltons. And this is basically an agrivoltaic implementation that allows solar collection for sustainable energy, but also in the same footprint. They've essentially raised the panels 10 or 15 feet off the ground with steel infrastructure, which allows and they've spaced they tilted the panels and spaced them out in a way where it allows ambient light in to allow for some agriculture in the same spot as the solar array is. So you can actually drive tractors right through the solar array, which is just phenomenal. So they talked through the partnership that they have with University of Massachusetts to basically study the success of different types of agriculture in that implementation for study and use elsewhere in the state and also in the country potentially, as well as international uses. So really super interesting. I was really impressed with the collaboration of all the different groups. So we had a general contractor there, we had a developer there, we had some folks from the state that had donated some trust funds to help fund the project. We had folks from UMass there that they were doing the actual science for the study that they're undertaking. It was just this extraordinary collaboration of different folks, as well as the Knowltons themselves, who obviously have been supporting this from the beginning. So just a really phenomenal example of the type of innovation that can help with the land, land use. I'd call it a crisis that we're in right now, especially in towns like Grafton, where, we're developing a lot for residential. We're trying to bring in commercial to help the tax revenues, and we also do want to continue to support agriculture, of course, in our town and in the state. So just was a really good project. I was really inspired by the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Nicely done, thank you.
Before we go into the TA report, while we were in the mood for scheduling things, I just wanted to ask two things real quick. Are we still on schedule to do the AMA at the end of the month?
It's not going to be in this, it's going to be in October. So
okay.
Ray, Evan, and I picked a date, and I want to say it's 7. I'll figure out the real date. It was a niner. I will send that out to you guys that we have officially picked a date.
Okay.
I know we have. I can't just remember it off the top of my head.
Okay. And there was casual mentioning earlier in the year. I think the last time you visited the senior center about trying to do that like a couple times a year. Mm-hmm. So we'd be approaching about the 6-month mark right now. So if you want to consider getting something on the calendar in the future, maybe in November, sometime in there.
December sounds perfect.
You get 2 things per month. November's booked.
No, but that's a good idea about the senior center. So let's just keep trying to bring that back up and
we can work with
coordinate.
Shannon to get that coordinated, and that'll be her first foray into.
Yeah.
Once the parking lot's done, then we will go right in.
Well, that's not happening until spring. So.
Oh.
October of 2023, you meant.
Ooh.
I'll book it right now. Okay.
All right. Yep. TA report. Unless anybody has another select board report. Okay. TA report.
Okay.
Oh, it moves.
Look at that
animated template this week.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, so we just talked about this, but I thought that was a great tour. I had a great time and learned a lot. That's all.
Okay.
Okay, so this is fairly similar. And what I'm trying to do now with the TA report is keep the stuff that it's going to take some time, stays on here so that we don't lose track of where it is, and other things will be a little more transient. So budget process, we are working with the vendor in the background to get our new chart of accounts aligned with our old chart of accounts, and then we'll start right into some of this budget process. Capital Summit is not September 14th, that's tomorrow. The 22nd. We were originally talking about the 14th, then we moved it to the 22nd. So we'll be doing that. We've got pretty good participation from the staff, and there's a few people that can't attend, but we'll work through that. And so we're going to do that here in G, and I'm looking forward to that. That's a good event. And then I worked last week to create the capital asset list. So I created a shared document and sent it to all the department heads with some drop downs and stuff. And so they are working through building that asset list so that we can then utilize that in our conversation about what capital planning really looks like. Yes.
Summit's a different day, I think.
Yes, September 22nd.
Okay. You must have just said it and I missed it.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Okay. Thank you. So we awarded the DE&I RFP to a company called Peace in Action. So we'll be looking to do a kickoff with them a couple weeks. Mm-hmm. So that's exciting. That's something we've brought from select board and school committee conversation to realization. So we're pretty excited about that. We had a kickoff meeting with the Grafton Water District and Tufts about the Westboro Road Water Main Replacement Project that we are funding partially through ARPA. So that looks like it's probably construction of summer of 23 by the time we actually get the material and everything else. But we're already kicking off the engineering piece of it and some of the survey. Town meeting prep, we met with the town moderator and did kind of the basic background stuff. And then we'll be looking to schedule logistics after the FinCom meeting tomorrow night. And then the IT RFP, we've received all the bids and we're opening them tomorrow. Yep. So we'll know where we stand with that after tomorrow. So we got a pretty good response, 7, I think, or 8. So pretty good, more than we got last time, or about the same. So ongoing tasks, complete streets. I'm going to leave that on here. You're not going to have an update on that for a while. We did an outreach meeting, but it's going to be, it's segmented. Public Employee Committee. This week I met with the retirees representative, and it seems like the number one concern for retirees is being able to keep their current physicians. So I think that's going to be a focal point of our next full PEC meeting, is to make sure we're keeping that conversation alive so that the retirees, if we do make a switch, are comfortable with that switch, or as comfortable as they can be. The new phone system, this will be the last, hopefully, time that it's on here. So it is mostly installed. We've got a couple of phones we need to switch around. We are installing, now that we're all on this 3CX platform, we're installing a dedicated phone in the police department that will reach all the schools and the municipality in more of a robust way, so that if we ever had a situation that we needed to open a direct line of communication without going through every other prompt, we can do that. And so we still need training for the staff. I find them to be pretty easy. You just push stuff until you figure it out, and then it works. But we're going to be doing some training in the next week or so. But everything works now. If you're a resident trying to get a hold of somebody, that it all goes where it's supposed to go. No real update on Office 365. Regional dispatch, we're going to bring back before you at your next meeting. And today I met with all of the staff, or most of the staff from Grafton PD, as well as the dispatchers. So I just talked through what we were talking about and gave them kind of a rough timeline, because I don't want, the chief and I don't want staff to be panicking that they're going to lose their jobs. I mean, this is a long process. This is not something that happens tomorrow, and it's our intent to take care of our staff. So we're not looking to make this catastrophic for anyone. So we really wanted to just get people to understand that. There were some good questions, mostly about what are the pros, what are the cons, what does that mean for how we're getting calls and things like that. Municipal center upgrades. So we awarded the project to a project to K&G Remodeling. That is the the door that's right out here by the elevator. So hopefully within the next 30 days, we'll be tackling that in earnest. Unless there's some material shortage, which there seems to always be a material shortage these days. And that at that point, I'd update you on when that's going to happen. And then I started working with Shannon last week. There is I'm going to call it the TV room at the senior center. You walk in, it has this really huge old projection TV in it. So we purchased a new TV that we're going to be wall mounting to free up some space. And we're going to, over time, be flipping over removing all of the seating and tables and stuff in there and try to make it more of a multi-purpose space, because they have like book club in there and they have other things. So, getting some more comfortable seating arrangements and, just kind of sprucing it up to try to get some more use of that and get people in there. So we started working on that. And I think that's it for my major updates.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions?
All right, up next is correspondence. Does anyone have any questions or comments on that?
I guess I'll just highlight the one because I brought up last week, the Community Preservation Committee, just to, for the record, that they did in fact receive the notification from the AG's office related to the open meeting law violation, and that there was no violation. And I think that was from a meeting back in the end of March. So it's all in the packet, but just wanted to say that indeed there was no violation. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, we have one resignation. I can take a motion for that.
I move the board vote to accept and acknowledge the resignation of Gina DeLon from the Recreation Commission.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor by roll call.
Often aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, aye.
Foley, aye.
Mead eye.
Okay, declare the motion carried.
I just wanted to note, just to thank Gina. She's been on the Recreation Commission, I think, for might be almost 15 years. It's certainly over 10 years anyway.
Wow.
She really did a lot of work on that committee. I know she was really involved in the Super Park, and so, grateful for all that she's done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gina.
Okay, up next is public comment. We don't have anybody here. Is anybody with their hand on Zoom?
Nope.
Okay, we have a set of meeting minutes to approve.
I move the board vote to approve the meeting minutes for September 6, 2022 as written.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor by roll call.
Often aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, aye.
Foley, aye.
Mead eye.
Declare the motion carried. We have no reason to go into executive session, so I can take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor by roll call.
Often aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, aye.
Foley, aye.
Mead eye.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Ray.
Bye, Ray.
Good night.
Good night.